Hello everyone, back tuning into today's video, really late with today's video, so we're going to have a quick look at the Arctic and North Atlantic oscillations, have a look at weather next week, 10 days, maybe I'll have a look at the CFS V2 for the next month. We are seeing signs that the cold weather that we got with us this week might relent as we go through into next week, with the winds reverting more to west, but I expect it to be staying pretty unsettled into next week as well. Later on, we'll have a detailed look at the bank holiday weekend. It'll be, I think, the 5th update that'll be coming up this evening. But before I go on with all of that, just very quick to say about the ASIS. Links to articles on all the pages. Have a browse widgets, click through the links if there's any articles that you're interested in. Thanks so much for doing that. There's video ads on most of the pages, which open up the content when you watch them across book up again. Helps to pay for the website. So you're going to start off with the Arctic Oscillation Observed and Forecast chart. Just see where things are currently with the Arctic Oscillation. So the black line here tells us where the Arctic Oscillation has been, and we go back to the 1st of January with this. The red line's at the end where the Arctic Oscillation is being forecast by the GFS model to go. And then this is just reflecting the state of the atmosphere in the Arctic over North Pole. It's not driving anything, it's just telling you what the atmosphere is doing. So you see that through most of the winter, except for this period in the early part of January, where the Arctic Oscillation went very negative. Through most of the winter, the Arctic Oscillation was positive. And that stayed with us into the spring as well, generally. However, we are currently very, very negative with the Arctic Oscillation. You can see that quite clearly. Forecast to go even more negative. Look how those red lines dip down over the next few days. But as we go into next week, we do see signs that the Arctic Oscillation is beginning to come back up again. Still trending negative generally as we're going through the early part of May, but gradually the index is recovering. So what this is telling us is that at the moment we've got a lot of blocking over North Pole, a lot of high pressure sitting over top of the pole. As we get through into May, that blocking should start to ease. It's going to be a slow process, not a quick rebound into positivity, but we should, as we get through into May, we should start to see that the blocking begins to relent, at least to some degree. And this probably ties up with the temperatures beginning to recover a bit as we get through into early May as well. North Atlantic Oscillation observed and forecast chart very similar. So you see we've had many months of positivity in the North Atlantic. Again, this is index reflecting the state of the atmosphere. This time it's between Iceland and the Azores. When the North Atlantic Oscillation is positive, it tells you that you've got westerlies, basically low pressure around the Azores, low pressure around Iceland, high pressure around the Azores. But you see, again, North Atlantic Oscillation going negative over the next few days and staying negative into the start of May. Albeit, as we go through the first week of May, the GFS ensembles, the red lines here, generally trending upwards. But it is a slow process, so we're not going to see a quick recovery in these indexes, which means we're not going to see a quick lift up in the temperatures and revert to mild weather or warm weather as it goes into the start of May. It's going to be a slow process to get rid of the blocking and start to lift up the temperatures. If we have a look at the GFS temperature precipitation ensembles the next couple of weeks, the red line here is the 30-year temperature average, so very significantly colder than average at the moment and staying that way for the rest of the week. Dates along bottom of the chart. This is Sunday the 1st of May just here, by which time the temperature is beginning to lift up. And you see, as we go through the first week of May, generally the temperatures are trending milder, but nothing to get excited about. They're only lifting back towards the 30-year temperature average. It's just compared to this very cold period just here that we've got at the moment, we are seeing a bit of an improvement in the temperatures over the weekend and into next week. But it is a slow process. It's not a quick lift in the temperatures this time. And just say about precipitation, by the way, there are plenty of rainfall spikes coming through over the next week, so it's going to be unsettled as well as being cold. And then as we go through into May, we keep precipitation coming through, maybe less so than the first period, but even so, it still looks generally quite unsettled even as we go through into the first week of May. The generic charts, then, this is GFS for Saturday. When winds begin to go back into west, this low pressure moves through on Friday, bringing outbreaks of rain, possibly snow on northern hills. That clears away Saturday, and then the winds start to revert into the west. Still generally quite a chilly westerly, and that stays with us into the weekend. This is Bank Holiday Monday, when low pressure is bearing down on us from the north and west. We'll have a detailed look at the Bank Holiday weekend this evening. That'll be around 7 o'clock on the Spring Bank Holiday forecast page. We go through next week and we stay generally unsettled. That's a deep area of low pressure that we see just there on Tuesday the 3rd of May, so a week away. That's bringing gales or even severe gales to parts of Scotland. So going inside next week, it looks quite unsettled, but with the flow coming from west to east as opposed to at the moment, which is north to south, the temperatures will be a little bit less cold. We go through to the middle part of next week and we find high pressure trying to ridge up from the south, but there's still quite a bit of low pressure to the north and the west. So any ridge that does occur late next week looks rather flimsy, to be honest, and I would suspect we'll quickly have low pressure coming back in after perhaps a few days of drier weather in the second half of next week. ECWF very similar, looks really unsettled as we're starting the Bank Holiday weekend, staying unsettled through the Bank Holiday weekend, although there is a little bit of a ridge down to the southwest, so perhaps not too bad for southern counties. Don't want to say any more about Bank Holiday weekend than that at this stage. We go through into the middle part of next week, keeping it unsettled, winds in from the north and west, so going to be changeable up to the middle part of next week anyway. However, by the time we go through to day 10, which is Friday the 6th of May, again, somewhat of a ridge building from the southwest. Looks rather flimsy. The air still looks generally fairly cold. Have a look at the upper air temperatures. I wouldn't say cold, but air generally looks quite cool there, even up to day 10. And that ridge does look quite flimsy. I think it could be broken down by these areas of low pressure fairly quickly. But for a few days later next week, we may start to build up a little bit of a ridge of high pressure. Let's see what CFS V2 is doing for the coming month. So these are 500 millibar heights broken down into weekly periods. The first week takes us from the 25th of April through to 1st of May, so the week that we're currently in. Have a ridge of high pressure around Greenland and down to the Atlantic. That's the blocking feature, of course. Deep trough of low pressure around the UK and to the south. The jet stream is going like that. So on the cold side of the jet, close to trough of low pressure, we've got all of this northern blocking. Unsurprisingly, it's going to be a cold week coming up. We go through to week 2, which is the 2nd through to the 8th of May. And we've still got a lot of blocking here to the north, so still quite a lot of high pressure up there. But it's all orientated a little bit differently. So the trough now is centred generally to the west of us a little bit, which means that the flow is going slightly more westerly. So whilst it's still unsettled, whilst there's still a lot of blocking over the bowl, the flow is going back round into the Atlantic. So the temperatures, that's the reason that the temperatures lift up, because we're going generally west to east with the flow as opposed to north to south, as we're going to be in the coming week. So the first week of May sees the temperatures recovering somewhat. Don't be thinking it's a heat wave. It certainly isn't, but somewhat of a recovery in the temperatures through the first week of May. Week 3 on these anomalies, which is the 9th to 15th of May, trough of low pressure is still there. It's weakening mode to the west. We've got a ridge building across Scandinavia. This could be a transitional period, perhaps starting unsettled, and then maybe going a little bit more settled here, and possibly a bit warmer as well. And then we go through to week 4, which is the 16th of May through the 22nd. And look at this, finally, at long last, we've got a ridge building in across the country. Low pressure is centred in the middle part of the Atlantic, so the jet stream doing something like that. That could be very pleasant, actually. Again, don't necessarily be thinking it's a heat wave. The flow could be coming from the northeast or the east, rather like that, and it's not going to be tremendously warm if that's the case. But compared to what we have at the moment, probably quite a bit milder and probably mostly dry. Fingers crossed we'll get a warmer, drier period through the middle part of May. The temperature anomalies look very cold for the coming week. They're off the scale virtually from the 25th of April through to the 3rd of May. Here's the scale on the bottom. It finishes at around 3 to 3.5 degrees colder than average, somewhere around here. And I think we're off the scale, really, in terms of the anomaly through the coming week. So a very cold temperature anomaly coming up. Week 2, this is the 2nd through to the 8th of May. This is when the flow's reverting more towards the west. Still colder than average, but not as extreme through that first week of May. So it does imply the temperatures from week 1 to week 2 do stage something of a recovery, albeit still cooler than average. Week 3 sees that recovery in temperatures continuing, so now we're back close to average, maybe still ever so slightly cooler than average, but close to average in week 3. And then finally, week 4, which takes us from the 16th to the 22nd of May, when that ridge is building over country, that one goes average, possibly even hints at going a little bit milder than average, especially for Scotland. So that is the trend. We're starting very cold, really, for time of year. Normally it's at least 3-4 degrees colder than average. So very cold for week 1, rest of April. And then as we go through into May, it's a slow old process. We've seen it from the indexes, the Arctic Oscillation, the North Atlantic Oscillation. It's not going to be a quick breakdown of this blocking feature that's giving us this cold weather. But very, very gradually through May, we should start to see the temperatures staging a recovery. So by the time we get through to the middle of May, hopefully we'll be looking at something, excuse me, a bit warmer and drier. Be back this evening with the Bank Holiday Weekend update. Tomorrow it's a 5-day forecast, and also we'll have the month ahead look out from Bayesian Climate Centre. But that's all now. Thanks for watching.